Hello all. So this session is a continuation of last class. In last class where we have stopped, we have learned about YouTube manometer, and in this session we will start with type of manometers. This figure you can see there are four type of manometers shown, and the first one is well type or single leg type manometer. So from this figure you can see there is only a single leg, which is an elongated tube here, whereas in YouTube manometer there were two elongated legs. So here in this type we need to note down the reading of only the single leg. This is also known as cistern type manometer and well type manometer. Well means this portion. This portion is known as well, and the area of this well is made very larger than compared to this long tube. As a result, the zero level moves very little when the pressure is applied. And even if a small error is occurred, then it is compensated by suitable distortion in the length scale. This is a length scale. Even if any small errors occur, then it is compensated by the length scale differences. However, in this type of arrangement is comparatively more sensitive to non-uniformity of the tube cross-section area, that is this cross-section area, and thus it is considered somewhat less accurate. So that is about this well type manometer. And the next one is shown here, barometer. Here you can see there is one elongated tube here, and the other portion, that is this tumbler like portion, here you can see the level is zero level, that is the liquid level is maintained zero here. So in the one tube it is higher level and in other tube it is zero level. So here also we need to measure only the reading, or we need to note down only the reading of this elongated tube because the other tube is in zero level. So here noting down the reading is very easy when one tube is maintained at zero level and the other tube is allowed to and the fluid in other tube is allowed to fluctuate as per the pressure difference. So here if one tube is at zero absolute pressure, then the value on the other, which is the height of the liquid level, will give the pressure which we need to measure, or the absolute pressure which we require. So this is the principle of barometer, and in the figure you can see, even though it is a single leg instrument, high accuracy is achieved by setting the zero level of the well at the zero level scale before each reading is taken. So we need to set the level of the liquid at zero level before we are taking the readings. So this should be done manually in the barometer. The pressure in the evacuated portion, so this is the evacuated portion of the barometer, is not really absolute zero, but rather the vapor pressure of the filling fluid, mercury, which is at ambient temperature. That is, at this evacuated portion, we are not having absolute zero pressure, but the pressure present here will be depend upon the ambient temperature of the liquid filled in this column. The next one is inclined manometer. Here, in order to increase the sensitivity, you can see the manometer is slightly tilted here with respect to gravity. Thereby, more motion is obtained to the fluid inside it. Because as this tube is inclined, whereas in all others you can see the tube is in a vertical portion. So comparing to vertical portion, if it is inclined, the motion of the fluid inside it would be somewhat greater. So this is the principle of inclined manometer. This is also a single leg device. You can see this is a single leg and this is a well portion, a single leg device, and the calibrated scale which is present here Here it is corrected for slight changes in well level, so that the zeroing of the scale for each reading is not required. So here also we need to maintain this level at some value, and we need to measure the fluid height changes in this single leg. So for that the calibrated scale should be somewhat calibrated or standardized depending upon this level of the liquid present in this well. So this is the inclined manometer, and the next one, micromanometer. The accurate measurement of extremely small pressure differences is accomplished by micromanometer. This is actually a variation of inclined manometer principle. The same principle is almost same, but there is only a small difference comparing to that. Here also you can see there is an inclined portion here, inclined tube is present here, and the well is also present. And the difference is that here the well and this inclined tube is joined like this manner, but here it is joined through this tubing, flexible tubing. And here also the level P1 is P2 is maintained here, and the variations in this level is noted down, and the variations in this level is obtained or recorded by means of a magnifier, with the help of a magnifier. And the level P2 present here is noted down by this micrometer scale. That is why it is known as a micromanometer, due to the use of this micrometer here. So here we are maintaining the value, the level P1 and P2 at the same level, and the meniscus at this point of this inclined tube is located at a reference point given by a fixed hairline view through a magnifier. By viewing through a magnifier, we are fixing the level of the fluid at a particular point. So here the reading of the micrometer is used to adjust the well height. Okay, that is why it will be more accurate. Micrometer can record very minute values also. Therefore, by adjusting the level using this micrometer and magnifier, they can be adjusted to very accurate levels. Therefore, this manometer is more accurate comparing to others. So in this manometer, the application of unknown pressure difference will cause the level of the fluid to raise above the hairline, but it can be restored to the original point by raising or lowering the well with the micrometer. So this value can be maybe increased or decreased depending upon the pressure difference. But by using magnifier or by observing through it, we can adjust it and can be restored back to normal. So during the pressure difference, we need to note down the initial values and the final values. And from these initial and final values, we can obtain the height difference or the height touch by which the liquid column is moved up or down. So by obtaining the height touch, we can obtain the pressure which we need to measure. So these are the various type of manometers which we are used in industrial systems for determining the pressure difference and all. The one of the main error or cause of error that may happen in these manometers are human error, because humans are the observators of this pressure difference or the pressure value. We are observing the reading in this calibrated scale or in this micrometer in order to determine the pressure. So errors can happen due to the observator also, that is human. So these systems can be made more accurate or more rapid only if this human operator or the human recording, if we can overcome or if we can change it to some kind of automatic recording of readout, then only we can avoid this error from this manometer. So for that purpose, some other manometers are there, such as sonar manometer. It will employ a piezoelectric transducer at the bottom of each glass tube in order to launch ultrasonic pulses which will travel through these mercury columns and will reflect at the level, that is at this meniscus. And then this pulses, ultrasonic pulses, will return back to the bottom and is received back by the transducer. So this pulse is recorded. The time required by the taken by this pulse to travel to the top of the level, or to travel to the top level of the column and to reach back. This time is recorded, and depending upon the timing, the level difference is noted down. So such automated systems are also there for recording the pressure difference. They are more accurate than human recorder systems. Now let us move on to elastic pressure transducer. And this elastic transducers consist of force responsive elastic sensing member, which will convert an input force or pressure into an output displacement or strain. And the pressure is recorded by measuring the output displacement or the strain by some other means. So in this type of transducers or the pressure measurement devices, the elastic members will be in the form of diaphragm, capsule, bellows or Bourdon tube. That is, these are the different type of elastic transducers: diaphragm based, bellows or Bourdon tube. And in these cases, or in these transducers, the resultant displacement or strain, as I have told, is measured by an appropriate secondary transducer. Okay, so by this system of pressure measurement, we may require two type of transducer, one primary and the other secondary. Primary is the diaphragm, bellows or Bourdon tube, that is the basic elastic transducer, and the secondary transducer is required to convert this output of this primary transducer to corresponding electrical signal or to some other form by which we can understood the input. Okay, so these are the various type of pressure transducers. So this is Bourdon tubes, these are diaphragms, and these are bellows. So first one, let us learn about Bourdon tubes. These are the various type of Bourdon tubes: C-type, spiral, twisted tube and helical. So the C-type Bourdon tube element is made by winding a tubular element circularly to form a segment of a circle. The helical element is made by winding the tube several turns into helix. That is, in this figure you can see this is helical one, this is C-type and this is spiral. Okay, so the C-type is made by winding a tubular element circularly to form a segment of a circle, and helical element is made by winding a tube several turns to a helix, and the spiral is formed by winding 2 or 3 turns in a spiral around the same axis. So both these helical and spiral elements are used when it is desired to reduce the stress in the tube and to increase the tip movement. Okay, and the tubes are made from strain hardened alloys such as brass, bronze and stainless steel and monel, and from precipitation and hardened alloys such as beryllium, copper, Inconel X and nickel spancy and all. These are all the alloys name, specific type of alloys by which these tubes are made. Okay, and when the pressure is applied to the input of this tube, then the elliptical tube, if it is elliptical tube, it tries to acquire a circular cross section. As a result, the stress is developed on the tube and the tube tries to straighten up. Okay, and thus the free end of the tube moves up depending upon the magnitude of pressure. Okay, so here, for example, in this section, we are giving input pressure through this portion. So by receiving pressure, it will get straightened or lengthened up, and by noting down the elongation or the deflection present in that tube, the magnitude of the pressure is recorded. So for recording the output or the effect of this pressure, which has caused some change in the structure of the tube, Bourdon tube, then for that a deflecting and indicating mechanism is required, and it is attached to the free end that rotates the pointer, free end of the tube, and that will rotates the pointer, and from the pointer scale measure system we can obtain the pressure, or the deflection present obtained at the pointer will be proportional to the pressure input, or the amount of straightening present or happened in the Bourdon tube. So that is about Bourdon tube. Next is diaphragm. So these are the diaphragms. This is corrugated type, this is capsule type, and this is absolute type and differential type. So these diaphragms, as I have told, there are three types: thin plate, membrane, corrugated diaphragm. And this classification depend upon applied pressure and corresponding displacement occurred as a result of input pressure. So first one, thin plate. Thin plate is shown here, this one. It is made by machining a solid block and making a circular cross-sectional area with small thickness at the middle. So here, this is at the middle, you can see that the thickness is small, and a solid block is converted into a circular cross-sectional area, and at the middle the cross-section is made small. So this system is used for measurement of relatively higher pressure. In a membrane, the sensing section is glued in between the two solid blocks. This is one solid block, and this is another one, and between these two solid blocks the membrane is glued here in between these two blocks, and the thickness is smaller, as I have told, in the middle, and as a result when pressure is applied on one side, that is any one side, as you can see in this figure, the pressure is applied from bottom, the displacement is larger in the other side, and by noting down or by measuring the displacement we can record the pressure input. And the sensitivity of this system can be further enhanced in a corrugated diaphragm. So this is shown, this figure shows the corrugated diaphragm, and here a large deflection can be obtained for even a small change in the pressure. This is the pressure input. For a very small input pressure itself, we can obtain a large output deflection. Therefore, the input pressure can be accurately recorded by recording or by determining the deflection output. So the materials that we usually use for making this diaphragm are bronze, brass, and stainless steel. Nowadays, silicon is also used as a diaphragm material in micro-electro-mechanical systems. Okay, so that is about diaphragms, and next we need to learn what is the pressure output and the displacement output when a small pressure is applied to diaphragm. So here output displacement is given by Y naught, and P is the input pressure, and V is the Poisson's ratio, and E is the modulus of elasticity of the diaphragm material. So Y naught is the output displacement, and so the relationship between Y naught and P is given by this equation. By this method we can calculate the pressure. Okay, now This is given by this Pmax equation gives the allowable pressure that should be applied to a diaphragm. There will be a limit for the input pressure, or there is a limit for the pressure measurement by this diaphragm. And here the sigma max is a safe allowable stress of the material, diaphragm material. This relation actually denotes a linear relationship, and in some cases if the applied pressure exceeds the limit, then there is a chance of going on to non-linearity. So in such cases the relationship between Y naught and P is given by this equation, equation 4. So that is diaphragms, and next let us move on to bellows. And these are bellows. It is actually having a spring-like action. If pressure is given to one side, then displacement is output. Bellows are made with a number of convolutions from a soft material, and one end of the bellow will be fixed, and the other end we are giving the pressure or the force. And through this fixed end, the air can go through a port. And that is, to the fixed end there will be a port through which air can go out and inside. Okay, the other end of the bellow is free to move. As I have told, to that end we are providing the input. The displacement of the free end increases with the number of convolutions used, and the number of convolutions varies between 5 to 20 depending upon the bellow size. Okay, often the external spring that we used for opposing the movement of the bellows will provide a linear relationship to these bellows, which is given by this. PA is equal to Kx. Here A is the area of the bellow and K is the spring constant, and X is the displacement which is produced as the output of the applied pressure. P is the pressure. And the material which we usually use to build the bellows are phosphor bronze, brass, beryllium, copper, stainless steel and all. So these are some of the methods by which these bellows are manufactured. First one, turning from a solid block of metal, or soldering or welding stamped annual rings. And third one, rolling or pressing a tube. Okay, bellows can be made by any three of this method. And the material used are this one. So that is the measurement of pressure by means of bellows. Next let us move on to vibrating cylinder transducer, which is also a method for measuring the pressure. So here actually there are two principles: feedback principle or null balance principle, or we can say force balance principle, is used for measurement of pressure here. So this is a method, force balance method, by which pressure is measured. So here you can see there is two bellows on the upper side and lower side, and here is a lever present at the center, and at the other end of this lever, here you can see the pressure obtained here is balanced by this system, and this system consists of, at the top portion, a spring whose one end is fixed to some point, and bottom portion there is another bellow. So here this is a pneumatic relay, and this is air supply, and this is the input measurement signal. We are providing the input signal to be measured to this side, whereas this top bellow at the left side is provided in order to provide a balance for this input measurement signal, or in order to provide a reference signal for the system. And this is the force bar. During the operation, if the input signal exceeds the reference signal. Input signal is given from the bottom side, bottom below, and the reference signal is from the top below. So if the input signal exceeds the reference signal, then the resultant force due to this difference may cause the force bar. Force bar is the center bar on which all the system is placed. So this central line is force bar. Okay. So if this input signal exceeds the reference signal, then the resultant force causes the force bar to rotate clockwise about the adjacent adjustable pivot. So the flaper moves closer to the nozzle as a result, and the pressure in the output bellows increases until the equilibrium of the force bar is re-established. So what is flaper here? This is flaper. This is the flaper nozzle. So when this when the input signal exceeds the reference signal, then the force bar will get rotated as a result. As a result, the flaper at the right hand side will move closer to the nozzle, and the pressure in the output bellows will increase until the equilibrium force bar is established. So this force bar should always stay in equilibrium. So if any change causes to this equilibrium, then the pressure or the output from this bellows will go on increasing until this force bar is back into equilibrium. So here the measurement signal, the input signal, when we are applying it to this side, then as a result the imbalance takes place, and due to the imbalance, what will happen? This flaper will move towards this nozzle, and as a result the output from this bellow will go on increasing, or a displacement takes place here, and this displacement is recorded, and this displacement will be proportional to the input measurement signal. Okay, and this output or the displacement will stop or will go on to back to normal when the equilibrium of this force bar is re-established. So that is the working of this force balance type or vibrating cylinder pressure sensor. So here the change in the output pressure is proportional to the change in the measurement signal. Change in the output pressure or the output displacement of the output bellow will be proportional to the change in the input signal. So next one, here you can see one other type of vibrating cylinder or null balance type pressure sensor, which is electromagnetic pressure balance. This is the figure of this system. Here you can see two bellows from the upside and the bottom side, and magnetic system here. Here is a magnetic system, and an AC signal is given, and which will make this inductor, a primary inductor, electromagnet, and a field is established here, and in the field an iron rod or a plunger is allowed to move here, and when the input is applied, depending upon the pressure difference, it causes this plunger to move upward and backward. So as a result of this movement of this plunger in the magnetic field, the output from the secondary will get varied, or we will get a corresponding output voltage from the secondary. Depending upon the moment input in between these two primary and secondary, the output voltage will get varied. So by recording the output voltage, we can, or by measuring the value of this output voltage from the secondary, we can obtain the input pressure difference. So this method or the electromagnetic pressure balance works on the induction principle. The voltage in the secondary is induced due to the mutual induction, electromagnetic induction, and the voltage induced in this secondary will get varied depending upon the moment of the element placed in between the primary and secondary. Okay, so this is the working principle of electromagnetic pressure balance. And next let us move on to sound measurement. So sound transducers, mainly microphones and hydrophones, are basically pressure measuring devices itself. So what is sound? We can define sound in terms of magnitude of fluctuating component of pressure in a fluid medium. The sound pressure level, known as SPL, is defined by this equation, and the sound can be unit is decibel. Okay, you can see a block diagram of a sound level meter. Sound level meter is a device used for sound measurements, and the sound pressure, as I have told, the sound can be also pressure measuring devices. So here sound pressure PI is transduced by somehow into voltage. So here transduction is done by microphone. So we are discussing more of microphone, which is also known as sound level meter. So these microphones generally employ a thin diaphragm to convert the pressure into motion. So diaphragm principle, working principle I have discussed just before. So here these microphones also employ a thin diaphragm to convert the pressure into motion, and the motion is then transduced to voltage by some transducers, and the output voltage of this microphone is usually very small value and at a high impedance, and is also at a high impedance level. So in order to accurately obtain the value of this input pressure, then the output voltage, which is of a small value, need to be amplified into some higher value. And an amplifier of high input impedance and of a high gain is used here at the output of the microphone. So this is the input pressure, and this is the microphone. Here inside it we have a diaphragm, and this diaphragm will convert the input pressure into corresponding motion or displacement. Okay, and this displacement is converted to voltage by means of motion to voltage transducer, which is also present inside this microphone. Okay, so the output of the microphone is voltage, and this voltage is of a very small value, so we need to amplify this voltage. For that, AC amplifier is provided. So output of this AC amplifier E1, which is an amplified voltage value, and this amplified voltage value is then recorded, measured, and is displayed. Okay. And through oscilloscope or some other wave analyzer, we can obtain or we can analyze the wave also. So depending upon the reading from the oscilloscope, we can determine what is the input pressure or the input sound. Okay, so this is the working of sound level meter or a microphone. So that is all about sound measurement, and one or two other sound measurement devices is given in your textbook. So please go through that also. Thank you.